Here I am.
Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
We defend our nation.
You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world. What is the India story? It's the story of the world's biggest democracy.
We are developing the road infrastructure. In the end of 24, it will be equivalent to the road infrastructure of USA.
We have now entered the growth phase. And I believe that the growth rate in India is going to be exponential.
Two narratives of Indian story which need to be brought center stage.
Every week, the India story will bring the most incisive analysis, the most authoritative voices.
India will be a significant pole in the universe of AI going forward.
India is walking tall, India's stature is different, India's voice is being heard.
And the biggest newsmakers.
This is just a start. Tokyo, we won one bronze. Paris, we won a rocket. Good to see that, women cricket is getting more excited and everybody is looking up to that.
And these stories need to be told, and they are guided by the compass of their conscience.
From India for the world, the India Story, the show for the global citizen.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have India's spice route versus China's silk route, an ode to the ancient trade passage. History behind India-Europe maritime trade route, reviving centuries-old trade ties.
This important economic...
Deciphering the Red Sea trade route with William Dalrymple.
Welcome to WION Live broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, let's take a look at this hour's headlines. Flash floods in eastern Libya killed more than 2,300 people in the Mediterranean coastal city of Derna alone, while more than 5,000 people remained missing. Ukraine warns of legal action against Poland after Warsaw unilaterally moved to extend a ban on importing its grain, says the step is in violation of trade law. India's Union Health Ministry confirms that the 2 deaths reported from Kerala's Kozhikode district were caused by the Nuke virus. A Russian passenger Airbus A320 flying from the Black Sea resort of Sochi to the Serbian city of Omsk makes an emergency landing in a field. NBA's all-time leading scorer LeBron James is eyeing a last dance with USA at the 2024 Paris Olympics. The 38-year-old reportedly called multiple stars to join him in the French capital next summer. Well, the U.S. Congress has been informed of a waiver signed last week, which allows banks to transfer $6 billion in frozen funds to Iran, bypassing U.S. sanctions. U.S. officials say the first batch of the funds have already been transferred, adding that the process will take some time to complete. The move is a step forward for a prisoner swap deal between Washington and Tehran. Under the deal, 5 prisoners each will be exchanged among the nations. According to the U.S. State Department, the money will not reach Iran, but will be moved from banks in South Korea to a bank account in Qatar. The Iranian government will be able to access the Qatari account for utilizing the funds to buy food and other goods. The United States will also have an oversight as to how and when these funds are used. The development is significant as it suggests the scope for mending U.S.-Iran relations perhaps still exists, and that both the nations are working towards that goal. Iran and the U.S. and their ties took a serious hit after Washington backed off on a 2015 multilateral nuclear deal with Iran in 2018. The Trump administration also reimposed hard-hitting sanctions on Tehran. The Biden government, along with France, China, Russia, the UK, and Germany, were renegotiating the terms with Iran for going back to the nuclear pact, but the process has so far failed to yield any breakthrough. On that note, the UN nuclear watchdog of IAEA said that Iran is yet to provide explanation for uranium traces found at previously undeclared nuclear research sites. Back in the U.S., the decision by the Biden administration to waive the sanctions for a prisoner swap drew criticism from Republicans, including former President Donald Trump himself. Republicans want American prisoners to be released immediately and unconditionally. They have also expressed deep concern that the money for the prisoners deal creates a direct incentive for America's adversaries to conduct future hostage-taking. Moreover, the Republicans are also skeptical of Iran using the sum to fund terrorism, causing trouble in the U.S. and the Gulf region. All right, for more on this, we are being joined by Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and Foreign Policy Analyst. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Edward, great to see you again. So the deal was inked about a week ago, announced on 9/11 to Congress, a 5-for-5 trade and $6 billion. But there are a lot of questions which remain. For example, who are they? How is the U.S. going to monitor this money? And why was this money even necessary?
Well, unfortunately, the money was necessary because Iran did take these American citizens hostage. These Iranian Americans, 5 Iranian Americans, not truly guilty of anything of espionage or any other charges that the Iranian government has accused them of. And the Biden administration has made it a priority to bring American citizens back, trying to, as best it can, avoid the trap, the hostage trap of negotiating and paying a, quote, ransom in order to get your citizens back, which, of course, only incentivizes governments like Iran's to take other Americans hostage. And we saw this in Russia, of course, with the high-profile case of Brittany Griner, the basketball player who was traded for a Russian who had been convicted, legitimately convicted of crimes. And Russia won that release by seizing Brittany Griner. And, of course, there are other Americans still being held in Russia. Now, the wider question here with Iran is whether this agreement will improve relations between Iran and the United States enough to get actual cooperation on the wider question of the Iran nuclear deal and Iran's behavior in the Middle East. Please.
IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi said that he has noticed a decrease in interest from IAEA member states. He didn't name them, but he said it's a decrease in interest in Iran's nuclear escalation. He's wondering why that is, considering the fact that the threat is as important today as it was in the past. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Rossi is doing his job. That's his job. He is the head of the UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, based in Vienna. Vienna is the site of where there were these talks begun under the Biden administration almost as soon as it came into office. These so-called proximity talks were through other mediaries, including the European Union, the United States. The Biden administration has tried to rejoin the nuclear deal with Iran, and that's failed. Iran has not accepted the terms to re-enter that agreement, and Rossi here he's doing his job, calling attention to the risks, the fact that Iran has been pushing and exceeding the limits of the terms of the agreement. And again, the IAEA is the one that's supposed to be monitoring that has the inspection rights in Iran under that 2018 nuclear deal that you mentioned. And so the 2015 nuclear deal. So that's what is at stake here. And what the United States has been trying to do, these are through informal talks arranged by Oman, has been tried to gain some form of cooperation with Iran, some reduction of tensions on the two sides, including on the nuclear terms, without a formal agreement, because this seems to be simply too great of an obstacle. Iran, the terms that Iran wants, the United States simply cannot accept. And so we've been trying to work around an actual formal agreement in these talks hosted by Oman. And for his part, the IAEA head is saying he's not convinced that it's going to work. Please.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that analysis. We'll be watching very closely. Edward P. Joseph from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
In Morocco, many people are still waiting for the aid to arrive as they wait in makeshift tents in Morocco's remote villages. Officials predict that the death toll from the 6.8 magnitude quake will rise. Currently, the toll is above the 2,800 mark. International search teams have arrived in Morocco from across the globe. Rescuers from Spain, Britain, and Qatar are already working with local teams, while many countries' teams like Italy, Belgium, France, and Germany are waiting for the king's approval. The luxurious life of the country's king is now being scrutinized. Morocco's king, Mohammed VI, was in Paris when the tragedy took place. And even after his return to the ravaged country, he has not visited the hardest hit city of Marrakesh. Morocco's King Mohammed was on a private visit to France as earthquakes struck his nation on Friday. The king owns a mansion near the Eiffel Tower he bought from members of the Saudi royal family. Mohammed VI also owns another 18th century property in the city as well. It was bought by his father. In Morocco, power is concentrated in the king's hand when it comes to important matters. Government institutions must wait for the king to make any key decisions. Many supervisors and survivors are struggling in the makeshift tents of Amiz, a large village near the mountains, has turned into an aid hub. Take a listen.
الخير عطاء الله الخبز جابوه الناس كاين الماكله كاين الفراش كاين كل شيء الحمد لله ما خاص والو الحمد لله الناس اللي هي احنا اللي بقاو فينا الناس ديال الجبل اللي باقيين متضرورين تنتمناو من كل شيء يساهم في الاتجاه ديال الناس اللي ساكنه في الجبل اللي مضروره بزاف اللي ما عندهاش ما تاكل وما دايزاش الطريق حتى الناس خصها تساعد وتعاون مع هذوك الناس اللي ما عندهمش وهذا قدر الله.
Meanwhile, experts say that one of the main reasons for the massive scale of destruction in such areas is Morocco's traditional building techniques, in which homes are made of mud, bricks, and timber. The World Health Organization claims more than 300,000 people have been affected by this disaster. Well, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has finally left India. The Canadian leader and his delegations were forced to stay in India after his official aircraft witnessed technical problems. Trudeau was stranded in the Indian capital for about 36 hours. He came to attend the G20 summit in New Delhi, but a technical problem in his Airbus plane forced him to prolong his stay. Earlier today, his office said that the problem had been resolved and the aircraft is clear to fly. Union Minister Rajiv Chandra Sekhar was at the airport to see Trudeau off. The 30-year-old Airbus A310 has flown Trudeau to Delhi from Singapore on September 8th and was set to leave for Ottawa via Rome. But this is not the first time that the aging aircraft has hampered Trudeau's travel. Earlier in 2018, the aircraft had similarly developed a technical issue when Trudeau was set to leave, incidentally, to New Delhi for a visit. There have been other instances as well of the aircraft suffering issues. Meanwhile, Trudeau's political rival has not missed the opportunity to take a jibe at him. Trudeau's main conservative rival has equated his situation with the mismanagement at Canadian federal airports. The opposition has also mocked Trudeau's overall G20 presence. They say that he was, quote unquote, snubbed by world leaders, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Trudeau was only granted, quote, a pull-aside meeting, and during that, Prime Minister Modi took up the issue of increasing Khalistani extremism in Canada. Meanwhile, Trudeau raised the issue of India's alleged, quote unquote, interference in Canada. And as per reports, he skipped G20 gala dinner as well, indicating brewing frictions between the two countries.
The Prime Minister of Canada.
Could you imagine spending a week in a dark cave all alone? Well, U.S. citizen Mark Dickey has been making headlines after his triumphant return, or rescue in this case, from Turkey's third deepest cave complex after being struck for more than a week. Take a look. It's been more than 3 years since the outbreak of COVID-19, and as the world battles various subvariants of the disease, which is spreading in various countries across the globe, the United States has approved an updated COVID vaccine list that targets these variants which are circulating. Pfizer and Moderna say that the updated vaccines are designed to boost protection against the latest Omicron variant. They expect their vaccines to be widely available in pharmacies and clinics within the coming days. According to the Food and Drug Administration, these vaccines target variant XBB.1.5, but also hold up well against newer strains such as EG5 and BA.2.86. Their approvals from the FDA follow a rise in hospitalization in the United States and other countries. A panel convened by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention is expected to meet tomorrow, and they will recommend as to who can receive the updated vaccines. In the past, the Biden administration has consistently pushed for annual COVID boosters for more Americans, and it's expected that the CDC will also offer similar guidance for this vaccine as well. But this is in sharp contrast to Europe, where boosters are generally recommended only for the elderly or those at higher risk because of underlying medical conditions. All right, a historic antitrust case here in the United States. Have you ever wondered why Google is the first search engine that comes to our minds when we think of the internet? Or how has a browser turned into a verb when we converse? We hear people say you can Google and check instead of saying you can search and check. However, Google's long-standing dominance is now being challenged and questioned. The U.S. Justice Department and a coalition of state attorney generals are going to begin a blockbuster antitrust trial in Washington. That's right. Alphabet's Google, accused of unlawfully abusing its dominance in the search engine market to maintain monopoly power. The allegations by the U.S. and state allies is that Google paid billions of dollars to companies like Apple and other business partners to ensure that it remains the default search engine on most phones and web browsers. It is important to note here that Google has a 90% market share in the United States when it comes to online search. The browser agreement that steers billions of web queries to Google every day has resulted in less choice for consumers. But what is Google's defense in this case? Well, you may ask that, and the answer is Google clearly sees things very differently. The company says that it doesn't prevent rivals from developing their own search engines or stop companies such as Apple and Mozilla from promoting them. Also, Google makes it clear that mobile users can easily switch if they want to use a different search engine. If we examine the law, it's generally not illegal for a business to make an arrangement with other customers and consumers to exclude others. But exclusive deals can violate antitrust laws if a company is so big or powerful that it prevents rivals from entering the market at all.
So the government's going to argue that Google search is like the digital air that we breathe, but the company's tactics have polluted the atmosphere and is damaging the consumers, that they're not getting the best search results.
The U.S. and state allies are not seeking a monetary penalty. They're seeking an injunction barring Google from continuing the alleged anti-competitive practices. And if passed, such an order would have significant business implications for the tech giant. Our next report shows India's price pressure situation. The latest data shows that the country's annual retail inflation eased to 6.83% in August from a 15-month high of 7.44% in July. A Reuters poll has predicted a 7% rate. Now, price pressure, though, remained above the upper end of the